Okay. Ladies and gents, thanks for joining us. Today we're going to be discussing the subject of loss and the celebration of life. We're going to explore this subject generally and look at the positive side if possible and explore strategies that we can use for coping. I'd like to take this moment to send some love and light to Anton Brown. We trust that the Most High, his guides and the ancestors welcome him with warmth, happiness, love and protection. Rippadon's family and friends are in our thoughts and prayers as we walk and experience this journey called life. Just wanted to, let our brother know that we're thinking of him and his family. Okay, so as we know, in the mainstream public, we've had so many people leaving, passing. I think it's the last week or so we've had James L. Jones, we've had Frankie Beverly, Tito Jackson. These are, people that are in the mainstream. Of course, Radical Love. You've just told me, you've shared with me what's happened recently with people that you know.
Yeah.
I know that with Miss T, it's like every other week. Almost, it's becoming like every other week people are deciding to leave for whatever reason. There's what comes to mind is the Jackson 5 and that song, what was it now, Can You Feel It? And then there's statement that they say every breath you take is someone's step in another place. I read and I learned that God always seeks to give more life and fuller expression, I should say, to itself. And I believe we can see this in nature. Life plays out in cycles which repeat over and over again. And what am I trying to get at here? I guess what I'm saying is, as it is difficult because we are. It's that thing I guess we call attachment.
Yes.
And that's why, how would we say, especially the great spiritualists, they say that we shouldn't actually be attached. We need to practice, or we should practice non-attachment. Boy, that sounds very hard, becoming non-attached. I think if we think possible?
I think that if we were to go back to a time before this world was made, and we went back to nature, as you mentioned, we would know how to handle attachment and detachment. I think these days we're so attached to a material environment that we have detached from being, detached or maybe appreciating the cycle of life. We've lost that to so much degrees, and I think in a nature way, there isn't as much grief because there's more understanding about it. It is a cycle, and the person, the spirit of the person, the energy, the vibration does continue in life, and the physicalness of that person goes back to the earth. But these days, I think we don't exercise, practice, understand or educated like that anymore. And then therefore it's more painful to detach. It's more intense in a 3D sense, in a physical sense. And we find it really difficult. And I think that the reasons why we're passing away, making our transitions as well, is reflective of this world. People are not dying naturally as such. There's a lot of unexpected deaths or tragedies going on, or health related issues taking place where people are dying because of this, because of that ill health or that tragedy, or that, rather than they passed away naturally. I mean, I guess we'd be talking thousands and thousands of years ago, where a person decided when they wanted to go. You know, they would live on, biblically, they talk about prophets that lived, Abraham, 400 years, you know, so I do think that the art of living is now misunderstood, to the point we're living in a different design of living in a world that is designed specifically to shorten life. We just don't realize it, the matrix of things. So it becomes more painful, I think, more of a tragedy in life, and our grief process becomes so much more difficult.
I see where you're coming from. It's almost like we've lost a degree of spiritualness, if that makes sense. We've become detached from that side of us, and we're more connected to the physical, and the physical isn't even really us.
Yes.
Oh my gosh.
Yes. Because I'll relate, when my mother passed, I, to this day, try to understand, I think you've spoken about it before, try to understand existence outside of the physical being. That it's not necessarily that it's a psychic thing, although I'm not qualified in that area. But I do believe that there is an energy that continues, and I try to understand that her energy, her spirit has moved on in a way that I don't understand, but it's not dead. You know, the body has shut down and been recycled, if I could put it that way, into the earth. But her wherever she was at spiritually in her being still continues. And I think that brings comfort to some degree as we try to understand. It brings a level of, well, we're not completely detached, but there are parts of us that becomes detached, like the body. As you say, you know, I'm just referring to the soul. The soul is everlasting, so it's doing whatever it does, and that's something that I don't quite understand yet, but I know that it still exists. You know, we say believe in the seen and the unseen. Just because we don't see it with our eyes doesn't mean it's not there. We can feel it. So yeah, what you're saying, it makes sense in terms of, do we continue to exist? And that does bring some comfort if we're ready and willing to understand it, even while we're going through grief and handling grief, allowing the experience of what that brings, because there is a loss. That's the reality. A person has gone. You know, that bottom line, upline reality, that person's gone. And that what we knew or know, we want to continue. We don't want it to go, because of course we want to know that person in their physicalness. So it's accepting, I think, that person's gone, and that's the heaviness. And I think that's natural. I think that is natural, that is to expect that. And you know, we say, well, we know they're continuing and they're moving on, and we're aware of that. But in that moment of loss, shock, detachment, there is a natural grieving process. And I try to accept that stillness of it, that it's happened, and I need to be with it, that uncomfortableness, that sense of emptiness, and that's so difficult. And I think it would be understood that you just can't. There's nothing to make it better until it's better, till we learn to live with it. It's just what it is. However, at the same time, what I would like to see and what I like to think about is my journey of grief is about getting used to myself with it, if that makes any sense. My journey of grief is trying to understand how I can live in life with it. And that part of living in life with it is that the person I'm grieving over is also living, just in a different way. So if I was to have a conversation, like sometimes I'll look at my mother's picture and I'll say, "You right, Mum?" And I'll talk to her, knowing that I don't know what it's like on that side, because give thanks I'm still breathing on earth in a physical way, but I know there is a different existence when we pass.
Absolutely.
So I believe that, so I will speak to her believing that, rather than just saying it for the sake of it, rather than looking at it in a theoretical way. I'm looking at it in a practical, honest and true way, that she does hear me, but in a different way. She's not hearing me in a physical way. She's not sitting in the sky on a cloud looking at me saying I'm up here, not as a physical being. But when I think like that, I feel more somewhat fulfilled, that I'm not by myself, that it's just something I don't understand, but it's something that is continuing. It's not completely finished and gone, but her body is, in the soil.
I think even though I have learned so much since my parents' passing, in terms of the spiritual realm, and what we call death and life, same thing really.
Yes.
It's all part and parcel. As much as I've learned, I had a wave come over me today where I just felt like I just had a memory or a thought of my mum. Just came to my head. It said, my mum knew when she was going to go, and I know that she knew because she started giving us all some of the stuff that she had, her possessions and stuff. So she knew even before she told us. If I remember rightly, she knew. And then I just became.
Did you, when she was giving
I became
you things,
upset. I beg your pardon?
I was just going to ask quickly, sorry. When Mum was giving you things, did you feel you knew, or were you wondering why you giving this? No. I think I knew. I think I knew that she knew. She was just giving us, her belongings, the children. So. But and I just remember that, and it just, a wave came over me. I just got, oh gosh, I'd got my vibration high as possible earlier today. This is today, and then it's just a moment, and I think it's just that feeling is the same as, or maybe not as intense, but it is quite upsetting. Yes.
That those feelings that we get round about the time that they go. Yes. And then as time goes on, they're not so intense, and they become less and less, or the frequency between when they happen gets longer and longer, you know? They say time is a healer. Not that we'll ever completely heal from it, from the experience of loss of those ones that we love. But studying the subject of death has really helped me immensely, just studying what I was really afraid of. What am I talking about that for? You know, it's like, nah.
Yes.
I didn't want anything to do with anything like that. But around the time when Mum and Dad had passed over, I was having all these experiences, meeting people and talking about the subject. And I remember there was a Nigerian woman, she's a trader in Walthamstow Market, and she sells jollof rice, the baddest jollof rice, you know, baddest Nigerian food. And I remember her telling me when her mother, she told me that she knew when her mother had reincarnated back into her family, because when her mother passed, she had a right hand on her cheek, and one of her female grandchildren, when she was born basically with her right hand on her cheek, and she slept like that for weeks. She said that she knew that was she knew from that. I don't know if there was any other characteristics in the child, but she said she knew from that. Nigeria again, there's a word, it's called Baba Yipada, which means grandfather or father returns. So that's when a baby boy is born looking like or having the characteristics of an ancestor. So just the study, just the study of us, and how would I say, not really focusing too much on the European idea of death, or their belief of death, and that is finite, or it's not finite.
I understand.
But we say, finite.
Yeah,
that's it, the end. And studying what my ancestors believed, what my ancestors knew. That helped me personally. And even up until today, learning, especially, I'd say, I was fascinated by the subject of reincarnation. Just don't get me
going.
Yeah. Yes. There's a doctor. He's an American doctor, Ian Stevenson.
Right.
And he carried out I think it was over 2,000, 105,000, something like that. I wouldn't say experiments, that's not the right word, but he did work with children, and there was things that stood out with these children. And for example, what he was finding with his works was that as soon as a child could communicate, the child would describe a previous lifetime. The child would remember details of their death in their prior lifetime. They would, so based on information provided by the child to the biological family, the child's family from the prior incarnation was eventually identified.
Oh, wow.
And their personality traits, personal preferences and habits often persisted from one incarnation to another. Gender normally would stay the same in 90% of the doctor's cases. The child returns, assuming the same sex as the past lifetime. Physical appearance can be similar as well from one lifetime to another. So there's all these how would we say?
Studies.
Yes, all these things that came up from those studies that the doctor did.
Wow.
Which I found fascinating.
And it's interesting to look at their studies, because these are things that we already have innate in our spirit, but the modern world has had the privilege and the resources to study things in a science type of perspective. So it's good when we can look at it and say, wow, look at this. But at the same time, as you mentioned, we carry these understandings in our history, in our ancestral connections that has been explained to us over and over again, like what you give with the sister from in the Nigerian with the chin, with the baby's hand on the chin, and she passed with the chin. Yeah, the same example. It's like it's I don't know if I'm saying it right, but when I think of my parents as well, they would talk about these things like it just came naturally. They didn't get to study it because it wasn't something that was studied as such. It was just life. Yeah. Whereas in this world, they will get the test tubes out. I'm not saying that the children
they will do what? Sorry, what was that?
Get the test tubes out. But I'm not saying that the children are test tubes, but they will study it, because that's what this culture has always done. It's gone to the indigenous, natural, original people and studied what they know for many, 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 many years and centuries, and then will, communicate it. But I think there's, in addition with what you're saying, we've kind of just known, like you said, these children, when they did the studies, they just knew.
Yes.
There was nothing that was done to them, as I imagine, or I'm presuming. They just knew. And I can understand. Go on, sis.
Yeah, so, yeah.
Go on.
I'd say with my studies, what has also helped me because I think our process right now, humankind's process right now is about unlearning, relearning, unlearning and relearning. And in my process, I think you touched on, would you say, knowing that they had, it's like they had an innate knowing in them, and they didn't really have to study anything per se. But I think it's me reading things like this, and then also talking to people, because there's a sister, for example, we were in the same investment program just before lockdown. I didn't know her that well, but I came to know her because we were in the same investment program. Now, lockdown, COVID came, and the COVID epidemic came, and then we had lockdown, and she and her mother both caught COVID at the same time, and both of them were hospitalized.
Wow.
Yeah, both of them ended up passing over. She passed first, the sister passed first. And I remember the family didn't want to tell her mother, who was still very ill with COVID in hospital. They didn't want to tell the mother that her daughter or one of her daughters had passed from COVID. But what happened was that her mum and the mother ended up passing anyway, and she could see her daughter that had passed from COVID on the other side without even knowing that she had passed over. See, and when people are telling me this on an everyday, these are
bearing witness.
things, these are the things that, it's like spirit just confirm for me.
And as you say, the bond between a mother and child, they say never goes physically and spiritually. And I've also heard that when somebody does pass, their body has stopped operating, but their spirit hangs around the body to ensure that it's being looked after. It's like a natural process where the spirit just doesn't go. Whatever's left in vibration, it does resonate around, it does stay around. And it's meant to be not a kind of like, I'm going to stay around my body, but more of a natural thing. It's in terms of the detachment, there's a process of detachment. It's not just and then gone. It's an easing away of the body and the spirit. And
makes sense.
I was being told that in that sense now, because there's an intelligence in the vibration, because thought doesn't die, it just continues. That consciousness is very conscious, and that's when people, when people say if somebody didn't want to go and there was a negative vibration, they could feel it, or if they could feel a lovely sense in the air, that's the person still there, but we don't understand it. And I'm not saying it from a spooky perspective, but I think there is a science to it. There is a way of looking at it that is real about life. But I think the cultures and of this world and how it's been made has created a kind of panic or myths and stories about it that has kind of messed up the perspective a little bit, kind of confused it somewhat. Because I hear some stories and I think, no, I don't, that's not true. Because there isn't a dragon over there. It's not as thing as that. There are myths from Greek mythology and things like that wrap up into modern times, for example. But I do think there is a physics with physics and science. There is a reality that we just don't understand as yet. But the main thing, I think, is how we feel. That's what I try and go on, is my feelings. Because that's the only thing I can say I've got, that I know how I feel. And when I'm having conversations, I can at least say, I'm feeling like this or like that. And then come to some kind of understanding as to why I'm feeling like that. Why I feel like that about that person who's gone. Or why I feel about that, about what they said. That's one thing that I can hold on to consciously, that I can grow with, is my feelings.
I get that. There was when I was working on the plantation, we had a client that she always visited the office, and such a lovely personality, and she always lit up the atmosphere, had a positive outlook on on life. Well, I hadn't seen her for months until she came to the office again, and I asked her, where she'd been, if everything was okay. She said that her mother, because I remember her and her mum had a close relationship. They were becoming best friends. You see the mother, you see her. She said that her mother had some issues, and she was helping her with, but also that she herself had become ill, and she had a near-death experience. And she said that the experience was real. That's how she did, if I remember right. That's how she described it. And she said it was beautiful. She said that she didn't want to come back.
Wow.
Yeah, but I said I had this passion for I needed to know when my mother and father had passed. I just had this urgent. I just needed to know about this subject. I needed to know where they were, and I also studied. I studied that people's experiences are different, though. Because with NDEs, I was reading these NDEs, etc. And I would also say, I'd also like to point out, though, although I read about NDEs, yes, I'd read about them, this particular experience with this lady who was a client of ours when I was on the plantation, there's no reason for her to lie. So I had no reason. She's got nothing to gain by lying to me about her experience. So I had no reason. I felt like I had no reason to disbelieve her. Yeah. So
yeah. Yeah, I mean, as you say, there's no reason to disbelieve her. It was real for her. And there's no reason why it shouldn't be real for us, because there's so many examples now. People are speaking more freely about what they experience.
Yeah.
I do think that, there are people, I do think a lot about how we go through our own pains that we don't get over because of different circumstances. So when we do experience grief, it's harder, as I said earlier. And when you mentioned sister, I was thinking about people who sometimes want to end their life, and that we're not encouraging anyone to go and end their life because it's so beautiful over there. But it is about how because the sister obviously valued her life and had a wonderful experience that meant something to her in the land of the living. And that was valuable to her that she could embrace.
I get that.
Yeah,
I get that.
yeah.
And
rather than think, oh yeah, let me pop off. It's better over there.
I totally get that, because some people, and that's where I think I was going to go, but I kind of missed my way. In terms of NDEs, some people have bad experiences where they are, absolutely, they have the opposite experience, where maybe because of the way they perceive where they're going, that is a bad place, or but this particular, I just always remember what this particular sister said, maybe because of her.
Well, I mean, that's
generally, but
powerful,
very, very, very. My grandfather on my dad's side, he was a motor magnate, and he ran a chauffeur company in Nigeria. When he died, he was buried, and 16 years later, well, Nigeria government, they don't do anything.
It's like the rest of them.
They just decided that they're going to make a road over the grave, or part of the grave. I don't know if it was all of it or part of the grave. I mean, I don't know. But anyway, they had to dig up, they had to exhume some of the bodies, or I don't know if it was all of them or some of them. But so they did anyway. And then when they dug up my grandfather's body, 16 years, the body hadn't decomposed at all. They put it, it was on the front page of the Nigerian newspapers. And, what was this, what was the meaning of it? I asked. But I was told by family members that it's a sign of the purity of his righteousness. I don't know.
Wow. Yeah.
I don't know if that is.
Well, why wouldn't it be? I mean,
no idea,
if we look at it from that point of view, why wouldn't it be? Because somebody's so intact, and if somebody was at such peace and fulfillment in themselves, why wouldn't their body contain itself? Why not?
Mm.
You know.
Oh, I came over something, maybe, I think it was just yesterday, Shaka Khan, and she was talking about, she was on, his Frankie Beverly's tour,
Right.
what I think he knew was going to
Oh,
be his last tour.
yes. I listened to that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was
And
really interesting.
oh
Yeah.
my God. And she said she was so, what's the word? Was it enlightened? But she was it encouraged? I don't know the words that she can't remember specifically the words that she used, but she said that she was, it was an experience for her to see how he embraced, how he was going to be moving on. He knew he was going to be moving on from one stage to another.
Yes.
From one existence to another, and he was so at peace with it and happy with it, comfortable with it. Oh, that's amazing.
It's a blessing. It's truly a blessing.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's exactly how I want to be as well. Just like
blessing.
that, because when you're in touch with life, you're in touch with yourself, you're in touch with life, you're in touch with spirit, you're in touch with the creator. Yeah, you're in touch with nature.
I do think as well, in addition to what you're saying, that because there are those of us that have experienced, most of us, if not all of us, people who have left us unexpectedly. And as I mentioned earlier, sometimes in tragedy, that the conversations that I've had in the recent and past is that once they go, they are at peace. And sometimes we think of them in pain after, but not necessarily so. They leave behind the painful parts and do end up in peace as well. No, we don't want to die in a tragedy or painful way, but it's to say that there is evidence that once they go, they do end. They don't carry on in pain. They do find peace because we go back to the creator and he gives us, he, she, people, however we conceive the creator, the author of life, is all love, is all good. And I have had one or two people say to me, so and so's here, and they just want you to know that they didn't realize, they didn't understand, but they're okay. And I tend to receive messages like that, but not go into it too much, because I'm just not qualified to understand something that I'm yet to be in. I have my appointment when my appointment's ready, and then I will maybe understand more. But if somebody says something, I just simply say thank you, and continue in the living. But it does bring some comfort. It does bring comfort, and that's the thing. I think in the Bible there's something that they call manna. Yes.
Which I think who was eating the manna, which was like a food that the creator sent to the earth. Now, magic mushrooms are described as manna also. Not even just magic mushrooms, ethogens, they're psychedelics, which are plants basically, that when you ingest them, they help you to, how would we say, to see. To see more and to see the other side basically, to travel. Some people can do this naturally. They don't need nothing, They can do this naturally. Some people might need crystals. They might need to hold certain crystals. Some people may take ethogens or psychedelics, basically. And when in that experience, you, how would we say, you see what you call, how would we, the word fractals, that's it, fractals. And what they do basically is that they just continue moving and turning into something else, moving, turn into something else, all kinds of shapes, colours, shapes, sizes, colours. And all they do is just turn into something else. And it tells you, to me at least, this is what life is. It just continues and continues and changes. It's just continually changing. If you look at a spectrum, for example, the highest and the lowest, or a spectrum basically shows you the highest of something and the lowest of something. It's like a scale, from large to minute. Now, does it mean then that if you look at the minutest end of it, does it mean that what you can't see means that there's nothing there? To me, no, there is actually something there. It's just because my eye cannot see it. Because if I look at an ant, you can see these types of insects that are even smaller than ants. I think they're mites. They're so tiny. Now, in my mind, there are, how would we say, there's life that is smaller than that mite. And just because my eyes can't see it doesn't mean to say it doesn't exist. We can't see sound, can we? But sound exists. The whole universe is built. The whole universe makes a sound, but the human ear is only capable of hearing between 16 and 16,000 hertz. The range above are ultra high frequencies, and the range below are extra low frequencies. But the human ear only hears a certain range. So just because I can't see something doesn't mean to say it doesn't exist.
Right. Yeah. Absolutely.
It's food for thought, isn't it?
It is food for thought. And, I'm just hesitating because I was going to say something, it went right out of my mind, but it is food for thought.
I think, sorry, my dear.
No, carry on.
I'd say because, we get skeptics in everything, in everywhere we get skeptics, and that's fine, because I don't believe that we should be clones of each other. Variety and differences of opinion is actually healthy. But I'd say I looked at the work of a doctor. She's an Irish doctor. Her name's Penny Satori. Penny Satori. I think that's Satori. She worked with a nurse, and she worked with patients that were dying. And she has some, oh my gosh, incredible stories. And then there's the work of Elizabeth Kubler-Ross. She's got a few books about death and dying. And then there's also Dr. Brian Weiss. I don't know if I'm pronouncing his surname properly. Brian Weiss. It's Wiess. And Dr. Walter Simcoe. He was, oh my God, he's got a book about, I'm trying to remember the actual title of the book, but Walter Simcoe. And these people, massive influences over me, and what they teach and what they brought to light fascinating. Anyone that's has a inquiring mind, I'd say look them up. Look them up.
See how it resonates. Yeah.
Yes.
It's come to my mind now as you were speaking. I saw that when you were talking about the colours and the spectrum and how the fractals and shapes, I thought about that the pattern of the author of life doesn't change. Life comes into existence through a very specific pattern that we don't necessarily know. And it uses these, for example, fractals that is around us, but there is a pattern that brings us into existence and then goes back into a pattern of existence when we have let go of our physicalness. And I think that gives, for some of us, certainly for me, a sense of grounding, a sense of understanding that when we're looking at how we approach or think about grief and loss and celebration of life, that again, it's about how we find peace. So for example, I could go and read one of these studies or books that you've mentioned from these people that have done some good, looked into the subject, and find peace. And if I'm talking about strategies now, if I'm looking at reading something and I find it too confusing or not comfortable, then I'm not saying people shouldn't read it. Of course, I wouldn't say that. But I think that it's very helpful to go into things seeking peace when we're experiencing loss. Even in this conversation, I can feel a sense of peace, curiosity, interest, and that's all about being in a good space, rather than in a confused space, if that makes sense. Yeah, so I find it what am I saying? Does that make sense? In the sense that there's so much out there, and at the same time, I can take what you're saying, knowing that as long as I find peace in it, it's okay. It's good, and I can use it effectively, or interpret or appreciate it effectively. Yeah,
I get that. Yeah, I get that. And I mean, others might say, well, is it you only believe that because it kind of gives you comfort, but is it actually true? Well,
I think if something gives us comfort, then there must be some truth in it. If the body feels at ease with something, unless it's a bad thing, there must be some truth. Just that I might not be able to pinpoint the truth, but I might be able to. But either way, like when you're speaking, some of the authors I don't know. I've heard of the Brian Weiss one, but I don't know. But what you're saying, that you've learned from that, is interesting. It brings a sense of curiosity. I don't feel uncomfortable about it, and I think that if something brings comfort, as I said, peace, there must be some truth to it, because we are created like that. That's what gives me foundation, is that if I feel comfortable and I haven't heard anything against my being, then that's what it is. That's my foundation. Otherwise, we have no foundation. We just swirl around with no intention. Whereas the fact that we have come and arrived on planet Earth is a clear intention of life, which is going to carry on forever. Once we come through the womb of the female, by the will of the author of life, that is a calling forever. We just don't know. We have a prayer, the Lord of the worlds, meaning, when they talk about the UFOs.
Yes.
Or they're not called UFOs now because they're now identified.
They had to, yes.
They had to say they do exist. So there are worlds out there for millions and millions of years that we don't know about.
Oh my
So,
gosh.
there is a Lord of the worlds, because the worlds are made by the inhabitants of that space, who is over everything. So, and has a pattern and allows or disallows to allow us to go through these cycles of lives to evolve. So I give thanks for being here, and I give thanks for those who are physically not here also.
Yes.
Because we're all part of one whole. And the more we grow to understand in death and in life the pattern of the Creator, the more we can grow to accept loss and live with it. But I do think that's a process. It's not something, as you said earlier, it's not something that just happens. It's in our own time.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And there was another thing that I remember that I picked up when I was studying. I just got fascinated with the ancient Egyptians and how they were more fascinated with the afterlife than their own life,
Yeah, that's true.
Live.
Yeah,
and they're like more concerned.
Really honoured death, didn't they? A lot. Honoured it. Yeah, that's what it comes across as anyway when I've heard,
It's coming like, no, that is the actual life. And what we're living all now, me and you and, the listeners, they're in a dream. We are dreaming now. And it is that, and I'm like, what?
Or maybe they were honouring life and not death. Maybe because, is that what you're saying? That they knew they were going somewhere or continuing? Is that what you mean?
Yes.
Because they spoke about it so much. Right, I get you.
And what I guess I'll have to study a bit more, but the way that they actually buried people that had passed as well, how they would bury them with all these possessions and stuff. The tombs and it's fascinating.
Yes.
Fascinating.
Yes. It is fascinating because even things have energy. Somebody makes and carves and sands down, somebody's hand on a piece of wood that is turns into a table by the hand. And it has a certain peace about it because somebody put so much love into it. There's energy in that piece of wood. So we could really go into so many things in terms of, as you say, life and death, the cycle being the same thing, in and out, round and round, matriarchal, and helps us to have a wider, an inner and wider perspective of loss and celebration of life, I think. I feel, even talking about it, I feel, having got news of so many deaths recently, I feel more able.
Thanks.
Just to knowing it's beyond me. It's beyond us. It's beyond so much that it's okay. It's, there are parts we don't understand, but it's bigger. And comfort can, if somebody is ready, some comfort can be given by that as we go through that grief. Yeah.
And to an extent, maybe it's a good thing that we don't understand it all, because the way man is, you know, the way man can be with what the knowledge that it has already.
Yeah.
Gee.
Yeah, absolutely. So true.
That some things just shouldn't even be within our reach or our knowledge.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Because it's almost like we are infants.
Yes.
I'm not talking about all of us, but, you know, it's the ones that are running things. They're like infants.
Absolutely.
You want everything.
Immature.
Why do you want everything?
Yeah, exactly.
Learn to share.
Exactly.
Oh, and if I can't have everything, like nobody else exists. It's just all about you.
Yeah. There is a lack of maturity, and I agree, because look how much we delve into things yet and learn more about life, yet we disrespect it and treat it so badly.
Absolutely.
The spaces we live in, the environment, the atmosphere, and each other, we have little, or in this world's way of thinking, there's little regard for life, yet those scientists, not that they're all bad or anything, but the way that governance uses the intelligence of science is not toward life, it's away from it. So that makes absolute sense, that we're living in a very immature world that doesn't honor life. And when I say that, I mean everyday life as well. Our people are being impacted in so many different ways.
Yes.
You know,
Radical love.
Yes.
We've come to the end, I believe.
Wow.
Come to the bottom of the hour.
We went deep.
Yes, we did.
Yeah,
amazing.
Give thanks.
Amazing
Give
conversation.
Thanks. Yes.
So, listeners.
I hope that, yes, go ahead, sis.
Yes. No, you go ahead, sis.
No, you go.
Okay.
You go.
Okie dokie. Well, we hope that this has been beneficial, and we have offered you some value, something to think on, something to contemplate, and same time next week.
Peace.
Radical
love yourself and each other. Let's keep it moving.
Absolutely.
Love everyone.
Give thanks.